Now, to move on to our flagellated protozoa, we're going to look at the Trichomonas species, and these are small pear-shaped protozoa that are going to have four anterior flagella, and the membrane is undulated. And they only exist in the feeding form, the trophozoite form, and we have three that infect humans. And you can see it is pear-shaped, and you can see the four flagella. Now, Trichomonas vaginalis causes an STD that's called trichomoniasis, and the reservoir is the human genital tract, urogenital tract, and 50% of those that are infected are asymptomatic. It is a strict parasite. It cannot live outside the host. It's a top STD with nearly 3 million cases reported yearly. In a female, she's going to produce a foul-smelling green to yellow discharge. She's going to frequently urinate with pain. She can have inflammation in her vulva or her cervix. For a male, the urethra is inflamed, and they're going to have a thin, milky discharge and sometimes a prostate infection. And they're going to treat it with oral or vaginal metronidazole. Giardia intestinalis is a pathogenic flagellant. It has a symmetrical heart shape with a concave ventral surface, and this acts like a suction cup that you can see there. The cysts are very small, and they can survive 2 months in the environment outside of a host. The reservoirs are beavers, cattle, coyotes, cats, and humans. Usually they're ingested with water and food, and you're going to have anywhere from 10 to 100 cysts in the initial dose. The cysts will enter the duodenum and germinate and travel to the jejunum of the small intestine, and they feed and multiply. And it causes giardiasis with diarrhea and abdominal pain, but it's hard to diagnose because intermittently the organism is shed in the feces. Then we move to the hemoflagellates, those that are vector-borne blood parasites. These are obligate parasites. They live in blood and tissues of a human host, but they can cause life-threatening, debilitating zoonoses. You especially find them a lot in specific tropical regions, and they're transmitted by blood-sucking insects that serve as the intermediate host. Their life cycles are pretty complicated. We characterize them according to their cellular and their infective stages. And you have the species that we're going to look at, the Trypanosoma and the Leishmania or mania. The Trypanosoma, these have a ineffective stage, or an infective stage, not ineffective. They're infective stage that we use to distinguish them. They're elongate, spindle-shaped cells, and they have tapered ends, and they move like eels. And we're going to look at the Trypanosoma brucei and the Trypanosoma cruzi that cause African sleeping sickness and Chagas disease. The Trypanosoma brucei is spread by tsetse flies, and when the fly bites the skin, it inoculates it with the infective stage, and then it goes into the blood and multiplies, and it causes damage to the spleen, the lymph nodes, and the brain. So cumulatively, it can cause central nervous system damage. The symptoms of this chronic disease are sleep disturbances, tremors, paralysis, and a coma or sleep. It is harbored by mammals, and you can find it in blood, the trypanosomes in your blood, in the spinal fluid, or the lymph nodes. Treatment does have to start before neurological involvement, though, and the control means we've got to eliminate the tsetse fly. You're going to see a lot of this in the tropics because we don't really have tsetse flies here. The kissing bug, the reduvid bug, is the vector of this one. And you find this in Central and South America, in Mexico, and the southern parts of the U.S. And the way you become infected is the bug feces are inoculated into a cutaneous portal of entry. There's going to be a local lesion, a fever, swelling of your lymph node, spleen, liver. If you, your heart muscles and your large intestine will harbor masses of the infection, and usually the chronic inflammation will be in your heart and your brain. Leishmaniasis is transferred by female sandflies that have to have a blood meal to make their eggs. And of course you find a lot of this in equatorial regions. The organisms are injected when the sandfly bites, and then it's converted into another reproductive form that multiplies. If it migrates, it becomes systemic. If it doesn't migrate, then it stays localized. When it's cutaneous, you're going to have a localized ulcerated sore that you see there. It's called the Baghdad boil. A chronic infection, you're going to have skin and mucous membrane infection in your head. And if it's systemic, you're going to have a high intermediate fever, weight loss, enlarged spleen, liver, and lymph nodes. Hemoflagellates are transmitted by, of course you know this one, insect vectors.